Okay, so there have been a lot of people having questions about fitment for their PL350 versus their X300 in Safariland holsters. And a lot of those issues are legitimate issues where it's not fitting regardless of how you put it together, and you're dealing with potential tolerance issues between the different batches of Safariland holsters depending on data manufacturer and the model. Specifically, the difference between RDS models and DO models. The DO is the older version of the red dot capable Safariland holster versus the RDS, which is a more modern one. The DO holster, specifically the 6354 DO, was designed back when there were almost no red dots available on the market for pistols, and the main one that was being used was the Dr. Optics red dot, which is no longer in manufacture. Nobody's making it anymore. But that was what the original DO was designed around, and it worked. It fit. People were able to, use it effectively and carry duty-wise their optics equipped pistol. When Trijicon came out with the RMR, the RMR seemed to fit relatively well. There were some that had to be modified. Some people had to open up some of the internals in order to get it to slide all the way down or to get proper retention. But for the most part, the RMR on a Glock pistol fit in the 6354 DO. So Safariland didn't feel the need to update the design. Fast forward a few years, there are a lot more manufacturers making red dots. The red dots have substantially different dimensions from what the Dr. Optic and the RMR had, and there became an issue with the 6354 DO and other DO holsters not accepting those optics on a pistol, regardless of the modification, unless you just cut the hood off. And that's what some people did, was cut the hood off. And so Safariland redesigned their holster for those optics to accommodate a larger range of dimensions, and they came out with the RDS Safariland model line. This is 6377. It came with a belt buckle. When it comes to Safariland holsters, the holsters themselves, the actual shell for a model line is the same. So a 6390 RDS for a Glock 34 with a light, like this one is. This is a light bearing Glock 34 holster for a red dot capable Glock pistol. This was a 6377 because it came with an OWB regular belt buckle to loop your regular belt into, versus a 6390 RDS, which is the same shell, but gives you the UBL for a duty belt or war belt, any situation like that. This was just what was available when I bought it, and the shell is the same. So the 63 RDS series holsters were an updated version in order to allow more optics to fit. So now that we have that kind of backstory history out of the way, what I've seen a lot of people struggling with the PL350 versus the X300 is that their optics equipped pistol isn't fitting into their DO holster specifically. There have been some who have had issues with their RDS, and some of those issues are legitimate fit issues. And I would contend, and that's kind of what this video is for, is that a fair number of those issues are a matter of simple lug placement and lug choice. And I've seen a fair number of people that have picked the wrong lug or put the lug in the wrong place for their pistol and their holster, and has caused issues with retention. So what I wanted to do is just kind of lay out the different the different configurations of the lugs. They're pretty simple, and then compare it with the X300 that I have. So full disclosure, both holsters on both of these handguns, I have a Gen 4 Glock 19 and a Glock 45. Both lights fit with both guns in this holster with full retention, no problem. When they're properly configured. So I'm going to show the differences between the two, how they fit on the different handguns depending on how they are configured and how they fit in the 6390 or 6377, in this case, RDS. This is not a video to dismiss any of the legitimate concerns that people have had with their PL350. I know that there are those out there. My contention would be not that there aren't any legitimate issues, but that those that are there have probably been overstated as far as percentages and ratios wise, because as is the case in just about any industry, the people that have the bad experiences tend to be the most vocal. And so I would guess that there's a measure of that, along with normal new model teething issues, first run teething issues that you'll see with just about any company. Maybe a little bit of unrealistic promise making by Mod Light. I think there may have been an overestimation of how perfectly easily these things were going to fit in every light bearing Safariland that existed. I think making that kind of a promise, maybe not necessarily a promise, but a pledge, kind of puts you between a rock and a hard place when the rubber hit the road. And I think there's also a huge dose of just community toxicity that I think has blown a lot of this out of proportion. I know plenty of people, myself included, who have not had any negative experiences, any negative draw issues, output issues, flickering, any of that stuff. Many of us who haven't had those issues, who just don't really say anything about it on the social media, because the moment that you do, you get flamed by a bunch of people who either don't have any experience with it or are backing up one of their buddies of a buddy of a buddy who did have a negative experience or claimed to have a negative experience. And it's so toxic, it just gets pointless to even try. So that's basically where I draw the line when it comes to the controversy when it comes to Mod Light. I think there are certainly people who have negative experiences with Mod Light as a company. You know, that happens with lots of different companies. I think people on social media, you get a lot of aggressive negativity, you get a lot of aggressive interaction that wouldn't happen in person, and I think a lot of stress gets vented on social media in a negative way, and it's kind of disappointing. But this isn't about that. Okay, this is not about that. This is about helping those people who have a PL350 and are trying to figure out what the most effective way to install it is so that it will fit specifically into their holster. Okay, so I have a 63 RDS, I have a PL350, I have an X300A, and I have a Gen 4 and a Gen 5 Glock. And I'm going to use those to kind of put this all together and show you guys how I figured out how to get it to fit properly in my holster. All right, so I've got my old beater Glock 19 Gen 4 and my X300U, a 1000 lumen with the universal quick release. And then I have the Glock 45, the PL350 with the universal and the 1913 Picatinny lug. So first I'm going to show how the X300 fits. Everybody should know by now how that works. Really simple. It's got a little bit of play in it. I'll typically put a little piece of electrical tape back here just to shim that, keep it nice and tight. And then my 6390 RDS for a G34 so that I can put the comp in there. And the Glock 19 Gen 4 fits, locks in place. Now this is it's a Glock 19 without an RDS and with no compensator installed, so there will be a little bit of play in the G34 holster, but it locks in place, no problem. Perfect function. Now, with the PL350 for the Gen 4, you will use the universal. You're going to use the universal lug, and that one's the one that is stepped on one side, and it's going to fit in the front slot of the PL350, not the back, but the front, with the lug oriented toward the rear. So when you hold it, if we hold it nose down, you'll be able to read universal right there. That's properly installed. And then you can put it on the Gen 4 Glock 19. Tighten it down, and that is a proper fit. And you'll see there's no gap behind the light. It goes right up against the trigger guard. Rock solid, no play, no motion whatsoever. Okay? Gen 4 Glock 19 with the PL350. Same holster. Proper fit, solid grip, solid retention. The fact that the PL350 is a little bit longer, it takes up a little bit of that play. This one has the Ghostman Designs portal installed, but even with the standard plug that it had before, it fit no problem. So proper retention. It's not coming out until I hit the nut. Okay. Okay, and now we have the Glock 45 with the X300 and the PL350. I've replaced the universal quick release adapter with the Picatinny to show the fit on the Glock 45 rail, nice and tight. And then the same holster, proper fit. Again, it's a G34 holster, so there will be a little bit of play, but perfect retention. No chance of it coming out. And a nice clean draw. Okay, then you take the PL350, and for the Glock 45 or Gen 5 19, you put the 1913 Picatinny adapter in the front slot on the light body, so that when you install it on the rail, it will, again, properly seat against the trigger guard with no gap. And again, same holster, nice, tight, proper fit, perfect retention, and a nice clean draw. So that is that's how I address the concerns about fitting the light to your body or to your gun so that it will fit in your Safariland holster. If you have a 63 DO model holster, you're probably going to have a little bit. There's a stronger chance of it not fitting right out of the box. With the RDS model holsters, I've found that the issues with proper fit are far fewer and further between than with the DO holsters. That being said, I think what happened with that specific issue was a combination of unrealistic expectations on the side of both Modlite and the customers, combined with an issue of scaling. I don't think anyone could really have predicted how dissimilar the Safariland holsters can be. And I say that having used multiple Safariland models across multiple firearms, and I've had fit issues more than once just with those. Long before the PL350 came out. I've had fit issues with X300 models. I've had issues with, running Glock 19s inside Glock 34 or Glock 17 holsters. I think when you're talking about formed thermoplastic sheets forming around molds against machined steel and machined aluminum, there's going to be tolerance stacking, and I think most of that tolerance stacking is going to be on the side of the thermoplastic. But I think there's certainly a reasonable dissatisfaction with how the promises that were made about how many holsters would fit versus the number of issues that people have had with holster fit, specifically with the Safariland holsters. I think there's a combination of unrealistic promise making and unrealistic expectation and problems of scale and tolerance stacking at scale. I honestly don't understand why Safariland still makes the DO holster, because there are so many firearm combinations that don't fit it properly without modification. I mean, you have entire companies whose business model is modifying DO holsters to fit, things like a Delta Point or an SRO. When you have fully capable RDS models that don't require modification at all. So, but that's a question for Safariland. That's not a question for Modlight or anybody else. I think a lot of people have jumped on a bandwagon on one side or the other. I think it's one of those, tribalist type things that you deal with in this industry, which I think is pretty toxic. I firmly believe that the PL350 is a superior weapon light to the X300, both in the switches and the output. Momentary, I guess if you want momentary, that's what the X300 is still around for. I don't find it to be a compelling function for me, but I think the PL350, specifically because of its ability to push a substantially greater amount of light than the X300, just because of that alone, 1,300 plus lumens and 55,000 candela versus 1,000 lumens and shy of 20,000 candela. It's kind of a no-brainer. The switchology thing, that's I would call that a personal preference. I don't find any compelling reason to choose this with a third of the output versus this and 3 times the output. But they're both fantastic lights. They both have their pros and cons. I think the PL350 is absolutely going to have some teething issues, and I think that people that have had actual performance issues should not be discounted at all. I don't think you should be upset with someone for saying, hey, mine did this or mine did that it wasn't supposed to do. But I also think that the quiet majority of PL350 users are going to have flawless function, flawless fit, no complaints. And you shouldn't jump down people's throats on either side of the aisle or either side of the issue just because their experience is not the same as yours. So for me, I'm going to choose the PL350 over the Surefire every time. If that's not what you choose to do, that's fine. You're not having a Surefire isn't going to get your family killed. Not having momentary is not going to get your family killed. So I don't know, that it's difficult. It's difficult to make it succinct because there's so many people with so many opinions. But I guess at the end of the day, stop being assholes to people about either choice that they make. I mean, you could see here that this one, and obviously this is a sample size of 1, but this one fits perfectly and functions perfectly. There's no flickering. Mine doesn't flicker. It doesn't have any of those issues. It's rock solid. I can turn it off and on real quick. But if you have to have momentary, the X300 will work just fine. I guess that's really all there is to it. They're both great. For my priorities, the PL350 fits them better. If your priorities dictate that the Surefire is better, then rock on. All right.